very much. Yeah, great to be here, and I hope you will like what I have to say about Grafana and observability today. So let's start. First, I will have a short introduction. Myself, I'm Rik Groenewoud. I'm an Azure DevOps consultant at Xspirit. And at Xspirit, I work at Managed Services Solutions. Means we help our customers with their Azure environments. So it's not so much about application creation or development, but more about maintaining the infrastructure. So I'm a bit of an ops guy. When you think about DevOps, I'm a little bit more on the ops side of things. And yeah, when not so long ago, I was working on these kinds of infrastructure, right? On-premise, very simple. We had a firewall, there was a web server, a database server, and that was it. It was, yeah, quite convenient and also, not so hard to understand. And at that place, we used monitoring to see if everything went well. And this monitoring looked like this. It was PRTG, it was called. It is called, it's still in use today. And as you can see, we used a lot of sensors to monitor this on-premise situation. We had to think about disks, CPU, memory usage, all kinds of stuff. And something went wrong. We added more sensors to the system. And yeah, this went on, and we had long lists, and everything was green, and until something changed, something went red, and yeah, we went with our fire extinguisher and fixed the problem, right? So yeah, this worked pretty nicely, but as I said, it was pretty reactive. Every time something went wrong, we had to, in the end we said, okay, we need a sensor for that, then it won't happen ever again. And remember, this was all on a very, very basic infrastructure. And when we leap forward in time, we're now looking at something like this. It is far more complicated nowadays. Just as Joost explained today, we use AKS clusters. We use microservices to host our stuff. So from this to a world full of interdependencies, of complex relationships between backend, front-end, APIs, and everything you can imagine. Or for example, just as we have looked in the previous talk, to an AKS infrastructure. And this is also one of the best practices from Microsoft, where you see how they suggest you can host microservices within this AKS cluster. And you have all kinds of connections, hopefully now securely, right, to the outside world, and also to all kinds of other Azure components. We can, and this is only a getting started example. When we think a little bit more bigger, when we think about these kinds of tech giants nowadays, these are examples of their infrastructure. They're called Dead Stars. And as you can imagine, it becomes harder and harder to implement this PRTG monitoring system on these kinds of systems, because it's just not possible to look at all those kinds of interrelationships, all the dependencies in those kinds of networks. So the big question becomes, how do we monitor? How do we monitor this? Is it possible? And people like us, or smart people in the industry, have thought about it, and they say no. Traditional monitoring falls short. And there are a couple of reasons for that. First of all, it is a reactive approach, right? You monitor, for example, your CPU usage, and only when something goes wrong, you go and, or it hits a certain percentage, you go and fix. Or when a disk falls down or something else, you go and fix. What I mean with known unknowns in this case is exactly that. And because of our experience, we know 100% CPU is a bad thing. We know that when there is an explosive rise in requests, yeah, maybe there is a DDoS or something going on. So the experience of an engineer becomes also it's very important in this kind of when you apply this kind of monitoring. You have to know the system very well. You have to know about all the things that can go wrong, and you can imagine in those complex systems nowadays it becomes harder and harder to know everything, where everything is connected to what, stuff like that. Another problem with the traditional approach is tool hopping. You have to jump around a lot of different tools to see what's going on and connect all the dots together. So, luckily enough, there is a new approach, coming up. It's here for a few years and it's gaining traction more and more. And it's called observability. And in this book, just published this year, there was a nice, they explained observability as follows. It's a measure of how well we can understand and explain any state of the system, no matter how novel or bizarre. And it basically comes down to, the change of mindset. Instead of trying to monitor everything, keeping everything in check, we must accept that, our systems will fail and we will never, we don't know where or when. Of course, there are the obvious stuff we do know, but there are always edge cases, and the more complex the system becomes, it will become more unpredictable. So in short, we have to prepare for the unknown unknowns. I have made a small info graph about it, and there you can see what I mean. So in this world of monitoring and resiliency, we look at the known unknowns. We do health checks. Is the service available? We have metrics, I mentioned before, and we collect logs. But as we move towards the unknown approach, it becomes more and more important that we can see what is going on at the moment of time. So we use traces, we have structured logs, we have events. I will explain what they are in just a bit. But I hope you get the point that in this complex system world we need to go to these kinds of metrics. So what are metrics exactly? Maybe it's familiar, maybe not, but it's a numerical information for a specific point in time. So the nice thing about this, you can see trends over time in it. It's a time series. It's based on a time series database, so you can see how it's going with your system over time, and you can do calculations with them. So, for example, 50 milliseconds requests is 15 milliseconds higher than average. That's something you can detect using metrics. Now, when we want to approach it with a more observable way, we want to add as much information to this kind of metric as possible. So, for example, we want to know, which location? Is it on a specific day? Or is it only for people who bought a certain product in our web app, for example? So this is our extra variables, extra information we can add to the standard metrics, as to say. When we look at traces, it's more about what happened before and after a certain event. It often looks a lot like this, like a waterfall. And you can follow a request, for example, and you can see, it took so and so long to call the database and get information back and stuff like that. So you use traces to find out, why did it take so long? what was the bottleneck in the flow of the request, for example. And we have logging. I think, yeah, that's quite basic way of monitoring a system. It's easy to generate, but when we have a log rule like this, it's just plain text, as to say. And what we want to do with logging is make it more structured. So more like this. You can see we want to be able to slice the logging on user or on duration. And this way we can make our logging more useful when we want to observe what is going on. Lastly, we have also events. And that's, an event can be anything. And that's very interesting because, for example, Netflix, they look at how many times their users click on the play button. And this is very useful information for them because now when someone is clicking the play button a lot of times in a small period of time, maybe something is wrong. And of course, when they're not clicking at all, maybe they cannot reach the video they want. So that's an example of what we mean with events and how we can use them in observing our system. Another example is more a business approach. We want to know how many times baskets are checked out in a web shop, for example. And again, what we want to do, we want to make it a structured event. And what we mean by structured is, for example, over here, this is how Honeycomb. It's one of the tools you can use for observability. Uses it, so it is all key value based. And you can, as you can see, a lot of data for one event. This is one event, and they want to collect as much of those key value pairs as possible to make sure, they can correlate the event with everything what's going on in this complex system. With events, in the end, we can use it to measure user impact, and I think that's the approach we want to go to. As I mentioned before, only CPU, high CPU or high memory usage. What does it say? Maybe it does not. Maybe the user doesn't. It does not matter for the end user, as long as they can hit the play button, for example. There's nothing going on. But as soon as the end user, has these problems, then Netflix wants to know, and then they want to go into action. So now I tried to explain you a little bit about what kind of information we want to gather, to explore, to get to know the unknown unknowns. But it becomes only interesting when we can do something with the data, not only collect all the data, but also explore it, look into it, and use it when you want to troubleshoot the problem. And of course, Azure, we're all familiar with, hopefully. They have a solution for this. They call it Azure Monitor. And when you think about it, they also use this observability approach of collecting as much data into one place. Everything is connected from the Azure Monitor. You can find all information, and they also, what we try to do at least is to collect all data, for example, into one log analytics workspace per value stream, so that you have all the information at one place. And for example, also your Kubernetes information, application insights. Those are all tools Microsoft offers us. To explore our infrastructure and our applications, what's going on. But there is a but in here. In my experience, when I use the Azure Monitor solutions, I still have to do quite a lot of tool hopping. I have to go from application insights to my log analytics workspace to for example, the database itself, look at DTU stuff over there, and I have a lot of tabs open at the same time. And one thing I also encounter is there's a limited scope selection, right? So you can only select one resource, and you can see some data about it. And then when I want to compare it to another app service, for example, when I want to compare 2 app services, yeah, I have to click open another tab, for example, in my browser, and search for that particular app service, because I cannot overlay the two apps on top of each other. Thirdly, the visualization options in Azure itself, the workbooks and the dashboards they have, they're not very user friendly, and to my mind, and it's quite hard to set them up and make it look nice. So there, Grafana comes into the picture for me. Grafana is that fancy dashboarding tool we all want. And what I find very interesting here, it has ready-to-go templates. What I mean with that is, from the community, there are a lot of pre-set up dashboards for us to grab and use. And also the problems I described earlier, you can encounter them with Grafana. You can add as many resource scopes as you want in one graph, and also multiple queries in one overview. I think these are powerful solutions. Over here you see, for example, a AKS dashboard. It's one of those templates. So you get this all for free to say. You see the CPU per node. And all kinds of nice information of how your system is doing. And of course, you can say, okay, this is the traditional monitoring, right? And just look at what's going on. And that's true. But as I will show you later, I think there's more to Grafana than only the dashboarding tool as it's become famous for. Because what happens if you have more data sources than only Azure Monitor? Maybe you have another Azure tenant you want to integrate. Maybe you have somewhere you have the Elk stack running, or you have an on-premise situation where you have a database running. Maybe you want to integrate pipeline information, and when was the last build? Maybe there was something broke down because of something that happened in the pipeline. Maybe you use AWS also. Or just with simple JSON connector want to connect your own API to your monitoring solution. Well, you might have guessed it can all be done in Grafana. Grafana has a lot of connectors. You can bring all this kind of information to one place, and in this way, Grafana becomes a hub for your monitoring data. So, on the picture I showed before, maybe when you have looked very closely, you have seen they have added Grafana to their own pictures at Microsoft Docs. So something is going on there. They have added Grafana, and yes, now we have Azure Managed Grafana. And just like AKS is a service solution for Kubernetes, this is the service solution for Grafana. Became only general available just in this August, so it was in preview for quite some time, but this luckily became GA now, and you get it as what we like about Azure in the first place. They take a lot of stuff away from us, right? We don't have to host a server, we don't have to install the Grafana instance ourselves, and we don't have to maintain the Grafana underlying infrastructure, so to say. Furthermore, you also get RBAC. So you can use your Azure AD users or groups to give access to the dashboards as a reader or as an administrator. It's an integration, and they try to integrate it with Azure Portal. So when, for example, you have a nice KQL query in your Azure log, you can click on a little button, it goes to Grafana automatically, and also works the other way around. I will also try to show it in a demo hereafter. Something about the costs. I think it's quite, yeah, it's a low bar to start with this. It's six euros per active user, so yeah, and around 100 euros for the hosting part. You cannot choose, for example, on which VM it runs. It is just, this is it. It is a double instance installation, and yeah, you can run it this way. One big disadvantage I show here is, yeah, those plugins, but which makes it so nice to connect all those kinds of data sources. We cannot add extra, and though there's only a list of core plugins, the big ones are there, but the more fancy ones, or the more, yeah, fancy, it's not the right word, but for example, stuff like that simple JSON plugin I want to use, for example, to import cost management data from Azure. Yeah, it's not possible in the Azure Managed Grafana as of yet. So yeah, that's a bit of a bummer, but still, I think it's worth to have a look. So I want to show the tool to you. So let me see. Oh. Okay. Yeah, so here I am in my own npm environment. Yeah, and you can just create an Azure Managed instance from the portal as a normal resource. Let me see if we go to Azure Managed Grafana, click create. We have just a few steps. It's not so. Oh yes, of course. Is this better? Yeah, you over here you can just select a subscription, resource group, a location, and the name, and also yeah, you can add some redundancy if you like. Yeah, this is about is hosting only in one zone or multiple zones, and you get more resiliency from it. It will also become a little bit more expensive than the price I mentioned before. You can choose, for example, to set up a fixed deterministic outbound IP if you want or not, and already assign some roles to it when you create the instance, who is an administrator and so forth. Okay, yeah, I've done it already. So this is one of my this is the Azure Managed Grafana from my environment, and you see an endpoint over there. And when you click it, you go to the Grafana environment. You start there at this start page. It's just the out-of-the-box start page. And when you go to dashboards, yeah, you see some of the stuff I have prepared just in some kind of demo environment. And as I mentioned before, what I like about this tool is you can add multiple applications in one overview. Like here, yeah, at the moment there's a large peak from the test app, so it's not as good visible as the other lines. But when I click edit over here, you can see what I mean. You have A, B, and C, and they are all different applications, and you can select which metric I want to see. Do I want to see the average, the max, etc. This way I can compare stuff fast. The same goes for this. One overview of three of my test, my acceptance, my production environment. Is it available? Yes or no? Do you mean this dashboard? Yes. No, it's also possible to do it as code, as to say. The Grafana instance I showed, the Azure Managed Grafana, is you can build it with ARM or Bicep. The dashboards themselves, they're a JSON format. And I can show it later. You can see everything I've created here in the UI. It's also possible to do it in a JSON file. So you can add that JSON file to your repository and then version it and integrate it in your CI/CD, for example. Yeah, and another nice feature of Grafana, what I like, is at the top, you can set the time scale. For example, now I've set it to 7 days. And you see when I set it to, for example, 6 hours, all my different graphs are changed accordingly. And also the logging. So this is, I think, an example of what I mentioned before. We also have to combine structured logging and metrics together to have a full picture of what's going on. So, for example, I see some downtime here on the test environment. Maybe I can see, oh, wait, this is the test. It's high. There's something going on right here, maybe with this high response time. And yeah, from here, it can become, in my opinion, a great starting point to start your journey in your troubleshooting. Yeah, maybe it's nice to see something else, and that's the connection. Wait, I go to a second dashboard over here. I see also there's something going on over there. I can click it and I can say view in Azure portal. Then I go back to the Azure portal, and when I'm logged in correctly, and then then I'm in the Azure portal and I can go from there. Something I like about it. Another thing, and that's maybe nice to know, and maybe something different than other tools you can use. This is talking directly to the Azure APIs. So you don't have to scrape all the data in and have a lot of egress data from Azure. It's talking directly to the API, so it's also near real time, the data you see here. And for example, when you are in some kind of log, you can just add KQL, extra KQL, to slice and dice the data. Yeah, I think that's it about what I wanted to show from here. Maybe something else, the data sources, how that works. So over here, from configurations, you see the data sources I mentioned before. And it's really easy to set up, for example, the Azure Monitor one. I think we are particularly interested in. It works on the basis of an application client ID. So this is about an app registration in your Azure AD. You fill it in right here together with the secret. And if this app registration has enough permissions to see the data, of course, then you can use it in Grafana. So this is how you set up the connection. And when you say add data source, maybe it's nice to see. All the core ones you can use in Azure Managed Grafana as of now. So yeah, also Elasticsearch, or maybe you use Jaeger. That's a tracing tool for Kubernetes, if I say it correctly. You can connect databases to it, and also the big cloud providers, AWS, Azure, Google. Yeah, and down here you see some of the plugins you cannot use, unfortunately, at the moment. You see install now, and when you click install now, you jump to the Azure to the Grafana cloud solution, and it's the standalone cloud solution you have to pay for. So that's not the Azure managed one. But I hope they will improve on that and maybe add some more, or add the option to install them yourself. So you can add the stuff I said before. And I'm particularly interested in Azure DevOps, for example. To go back to my presentation, if it's still there, no. Okay, PowerPoint. This one. Yes. Yes. So to have a recap of what I've told. With microsystems infrastructure, with the complex interrelated microservice we use nowadays, we have to have a change of mindset from the old school monitoring to accept that our systems will fail, and we have to just prepare ourselves for those unknown unknowns. And how do we do that? Making sure we collect useful information in a useful way, so with structured logging, also structured events, to make it possible to slice and dice through it. And I think Grafana can be a great tool to not only visualize with those those cool dashboards, but also bring together all the data sources and to explore it. And I would like to end up with a nice quote. While monitoring can help us to see there is an issue, and with observability we can discover why what is this issue. So thank you. If there are questions, please let me know. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So you can, for example, when you have multiple Azure environments, that's also maybe some interesting for like CSPs. And then I want to add all my customers into maybe one Grafana environment. This is something I'm thinking about. Yeah. 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 That's true. Yeah. That's why I'm saying like, okay, maybe it can be a decentralized hub of all of my monitoring data. Yeah. Sorry. For free? The Azure Managed for 30 days. Yeah. 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 And then you have to pay around 100 euros. So yeah, I run it now on my MPN license. At the end of the month, it's empty. Yeah. 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 Hmm. Yes. So yeah, that's where you define them. That's something strange happening to my laptop every time I switch. All my everything is gone, but okay. Yeah. You do it over here in the data sources. So you have your data sources right here, and you can add data sources. So you can, you can connect MySQL or also Microsoft SQL Server, for example. That's also interesting. It's also one of the core ones, and the Azure one is what I've showed you today. AI input. I don't know. Yeah, maybe first you have your AI, but maybe in a database, then you can import it. But I'm not sure if there is a one-on-one connection or something like that. Mm-hmm. 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 That's a good question. You mean the alerting in Grafana, right? Yeah. At first I thought no, but then the other day I saw when I'm here and when I'm this one. Yeah, I can do edit, and I also saw something like yes. Yeah, there was alerts right there, but okay. Yeah, apparently not. And I think because maybe Azure want to have their alerting in their own alerting solutions, right? So, yeah, I'm a bit confused because I saw when I was working in it last day, I saw, yeah, here, alert. Then I can create alert, yeah. So, yeah, apparently it is. But I know I've not tested this actually myself, but yeah, it is possible. So to see, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, for me it is those, yeah, the possibility to customize the installation. So those plugins, for example, that's one of the big differences. Um, yeah, but there are also the benefits from the managed side of things. Yeah, 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 and you don't have to worry about hosting. Yeah, 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 stuff like that. But it looks to me that it is still a bit of a light version of Grafana, so to say. But yeah, yeah, okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. That's true. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and also maybe when you have a like big environment with a lot of dashboards and stuff like that, maybe the hosting is not enough from the because you cannot choose a bigger VMers for stuff like that the underlying the managed Grafana. So yeah, it's not. Yeah, to me, it looks like it's more or less like more bounded, or you can, for example, yeah, not install stuff on it. Yeah. Uh, um, yeah, yeah. Fundamentally, Grafana is an open source platform. And it was there before. Yeah, the Azure Managed Grafana just came out recently. Oh yeah, it was there. Yeah, and it's very big, and every cloud provider uses it, and especially in the Kubernetes world, it's used a lot. So yes. Okay, thank you.